Welcome back, Rosebuds. Now, who doesn't love a little canine love, especially the ghostly kind? Today, I've rounded up 6 ghostly dog tales for you. Yes, we have 5 true tales, and 1 that is complete fiction. Make sure to listen all the way to the end where I'll reveal which story was the fake. So sit back, dim the lights, and settle in for 5 frightening, ghostly dog tales to tell in the dark. Story number 1, The Dog Demon. I lived in a huge old Victorian home that was remade into several sectioned off apartments. This also had abandoned sites right next to it where vagabonds lived. Not sure if this somehow contributed to the energy, as there was a lot of drug use and crime in the neighborhood. Often, I would hear weird sounds in the passage that led to the individual apartments. We also had a lot of power outages that year I lived there, and noises were even more common when there were outages. The noises I would hear were not normal, not like people or floorboards shifting and creaking from the foundation settling. Once I got home late from work, I froze just as I entered the first outside door, as I felt like something was looking at me from above. I looked up and could see a shadow of a form which looked like an animal. So I took my phone out and aimed it at the thing, since the stairwell had very dim lights going up. Maybe it was a dog from the nearby terrace that somehow got in. I couldn't see it clearly, so I wasn't sure if it was my imagination. My phone was on the fritz at the time, and the only way I could access my flashlight to get a better look was to activate the flashlight through my camera. What I saw gave me chills. I saw a canine-like head with a black body, but it wasn't quite a dog either. The thing was also standing up on its rear legs, reaching maybe 2 yards high. It made a bit of a move towards me, but it didn't make a single sound. Realized those floorboards were old and rotting, so it should have creaked. This all happened in less than a minute, in which I snapped a picture, hoping to both scare it and capture some evidence, then noped the F up the stairwell to my apartment on the 2nd level. This thing was all the way at the top, thank goodness. The picture was terrible quality, so sharing it with people made it hard for them to even believe me. There were no more sounds that night, but I locked my door all the same and had a difficult time sleeping that night. I'm glad as F that we moved out of there after only a year. Story number 2, Skinwalker or Aggressive Dog. It was about 8:30 p.m. While taking out the trash at work with a coworker roommate, a large dog approached us. It seemed to be galloping. It wasn't walking normally like an animal should. Because there were many surrounding lights, it seemed as though the dog was entirely black. I could see a slight reflection in its eyes. It seemed to lack a shadow. My roommate and I both expressed having different experiences and visions of the dog later on when we talked about our experiences. When I initially saw the dog, I interacted saying, "Oh, dog," in excitement. For me, it proceeded to sit entirely still on the cement, staring like a statue. What I saw was a large, fluffy black dog, lazy ears, similar to a Newfoundland. My roommate, on the other hand, expressed seeing the dog as a large, very muscular, aggressive-looking black dog that stood rigid the entire time, staring like it wanted to attack. It was short-haired and had pointed ears. I jokingly stated after a moment that the dog might be a skinwalker, not really anticipating that anything would happen. Then we immediately felt a wash of dread fall over us. Something felt wrong. We both saw the dog's jaw open, almost if it was about to bark. We heard a distant, yet extremely clear, high-pitched, yet not human voice say,
Come here.
The dog immediately turned and took off towards us. We began to run. We stopped after a while and turned around to look, and the creature was unreasonably far up the road for the short amount of time that had passed, not closer as we would have assumed. Oddly, it was wobbling, crossing its paws, walking oddly. Then, just before it turned to walk back around the corner, it seemed to nearly stand up on its hind quarters, walking on two legs, then passed out of sight. The rest of the night was completely unnerving. We heard distant howls that kept us on edge. Both of us concurred that even if that black dog wasn't a Skinwalker, it wasn't a normal dog either. Story number 3, the human-headed dogs. My sister had this encounter a couple of nights ago, and my family and I don't know what to make of it. At about 12 midnight, my mother heard something hit our front door. This caused my older sister and my mom to be awake at the same time. My sister's dog left her room and started barking at the door, but because no further banging was heard, no one came to the front door to further check what the noise was. The dog could bark at a speck of paper floating by, so we didn't really take it seriously. After my sister's dog stopped barking, my sister then heard the laughing of 2 small girls. The laughing was loud enough for my other sister, whose room is across from my older sister's room, to be awakened by it. My older sister decided to check outside her window and saw 2 white-looking dogs who were the source of the laughing children's voices. After closely watching the 2 creatures, she then noticed that the 2 white dogs had human heads with flowing human-like hair. They laughed their way down our block, leaving my sister utterly terrified. Story number 4, the haunted dog statues. 1/3 of my childhood, I lived in my grandparents' house, which had this huge stone wrought iron fence around the property. On the 2 posts to the gate entrance, there were huge dog-like stone gargoyles. I never liked them and always felt there was something off about them. I didn't think much of the feeling because I was a kid and kids scare easily from harmless stuff. For context, flip phones were starting to be up and coming by the time I hit my teens, and that's when this incident took place. By this time, Mom had remarried my stepdad, and my 2 siblings and I didn't live with the grandparents anymore, but we did go back and visit often. I'd just gotten a new flip phone for Christmas that year. I think I was about 15, and we'd spent that holiday with my grandparents. I was outside trying out the new camera and decided to take a picture of the big fluffy clouds. Mind you, I'm standing inside the grounds, about 15 feet from the entrance to where the stone dogs are perched atop their pillars. I snap a pic of the beautiful clouds and just caught the dog statues in the shot at the bottom of the picture. When I looked at it, I nearly myself. I'm looking at the dog statue on the right, and instead of it facing outwards towards the street like it's supposed to, it's facing to the left towards the other dog. I zoom in, and sure enough, despite it being blurry, due to the pic probably being 1 megapixel if that, the statue is not looking out at the street. I look up from my phone at the statue and all is normal. I ran in immediately and showed my mom, who brushed it off as just a phone glitch. My stepdad, on the other hand, actually took it seriously. He knew a thing or two about technology and paled when he saw it. He said quietly to me, "Son, don't go near those things anymore, okay?" My stepdad was like my real dad growing up. I'm not sure if he actually believed me, but I leaned towards thinking he did. I wish I still had the photo, but you know how it goes with those old phones. No one ever saved their flip phone photos back then. My grandparents' house was odd, and there are other haunted happenings I could share, such as cold spots, doors opening when they were solidly closed, and stuff like that. However, the dog statue incident has got to be the creepiest thing that ever happened to me there, hands down. Story number 5, Shadow Dog. I was about 8 or 9 years old when this happened. For context, I grew up in an environment that was not the most nurturing or safe. I had 4 siblings, 2 younger sisters and 2 older brothers, putting me right in the middle. One of my older brothers had a friend that came over all the time, and he really creeped me out. Something about him just felt off, so I tried to avoid him. This older brother was also not the kindest to me. In fact, for years, it seemed he downright hated me. He was mean to the point of abuse. To counter the trauma I was going through, I created an imaginary dog in my mind. His name was Shadow Dog, and I would make up stories and games with him to help me cope. He was a huge black dog, almost like a wolf, and had glowing red eyes. We had this forest behind our house that I used to play in by myself. I know it's strange, but I felt safe there. One day, I'm back there and I hear footsteps approaching. It's my brother's friend, and he'd spotted me. He was coming straight towards me, and I didn't like the look on his face. I instantly became terrified. I didn't want to go too far into the woods, but I couldn't exactly return to my house, or that would have been going straight towards him. So I began to run deeper into the woods, and I could hear him chasing me. He caught up and grabbed me by the arm. I tripped and fell and was trying to scramble away, and he grabbed my leg and was pulling me towards him. All I could think was, "Shadow Dog, please help me." I was trying to fend him off as it became horrifyingly apparent what his intentions were. The next thing I knew, a black dog came out of nowhere and began to bite the boy's leg. I saw the look of shock on the boy's face, and he let go of me, giving me time to run away. Now, this dog didn't look like Shadow Dog. He wasn't big like the dog in my imagination. He was normal, medium-sized. As I scrambled to get up, though, there are 2 things I noticed about this dog that weren't normal. 1, his eyes were glowing red, just like Shadow Dog, and he didn't seem solid. He was a bit transparent, like a ghost. I didn't have much time to sit there and stare, but whatever this entity was, it protected me that day. People can say it was my imagination, but when the boy came back in to go to my brother's room, his pant leg was torn right where the dog had attacked him. I know he saw it too, and I know it saved me from him doing nefarious things to me that day. Story number 6, A Haunted Highland Presence. In 2013, my brother and I were employed as salmon fishermen pretty far up in the northwest Highlands of Scotland. This means we were both living there for a full winter. Now, it gets really dark, really cold, and really stormy in the winter. We were a very small village next to the sea, with maybe 50 houses spread out along a few miles. Just darkness, heather moors, sea and mountains on either side outside the little row of streetlights. I was living with my mom in her little house, which was cozy enough and nothing untoward happened there. But my brother was renting a massive house about a half a mile up the road. It was about 6 bedrooms, I think, very old and tucked away in some trees at a bend in the road. Most of the rooms were unused and full of old junk, which was spooky enough unto itself. My brother just used the living room, bedroom, and we converted a downstairs room into a gym that we used together. Apparently, he was sitting watching TV one night on a fairly still night. His living room had a direct door to the outside, which was locked shut, and the door handle started to rattle. Not the whole door shaking with the wind or whatever, just the door handle, as if someone outside was tugging on the handle trying to open it. Even more unsettling is that there were big windows in the house, and you could effectively see the outside of this door, and no one was there. After a while it stopped, but needless to say, I think he had a very restless night. He's not really a big paranormal believer, so I'm inclined to believe this really happened to him. He certainly seemed rattled the next day. What's more, I may have imagined it, but one day when I was working out in our small gym, I could have swore I heard footsteps or the sound of someone pushing a heavy thing across the floor upstairs. Most likely just the wind, but it did creep me out, even in broad daylight, and I was alone in the house at that time. On top of that, the closest building to his house is actually an 18th century ruin. There are a lot of these out there. His ruins were just on the other side of the trees. It's set back from the road and there's a slope going upward, so on a dark night, the streetlights don't catch it and any silhouettes are very visible and quite spooky. Anyway, everyone I know agrees that this ruin is different from the others in the village somehow. There really are loads of them left over from the Highland clearances, a particularly dark time in the Scottish Highlands. All the other ruins feel quite benign and empty. You don't really even notice them. I've always felt the need to speed up when I walk past this particular one near my brother's house. Even my wife agreed about this same thing last week when we went for a stroll. There's just something weird about it. When I was living there and had to walk my mom's dog, he would get his hackles up and growl in the direction of the ruins most nights. I know this sounds as if it's straight from television or a novel, but one night, I'm walking and see a huge shadow that looks like a great big black dog up on top of the slope. My mom's dog starts to bark and I realize it's time to leave. Because it was a silhouette, maybe it was a wolf or a buck, but its form was rather hulking and huge, so I'm unsure. It certainly annoyed the old dog, and the way it looked was eerie, and did get the imagination going. I can't help thinking that there is some kind of mournful, vengeful presence there that terrorizes anyone living nearby on a cold Highland winter night. Well, Rosebuds, have you guessed which story was the fake? Alright, well, here it is. Story number 4, The Haunted Dog Statues, was entirely fictional, and it's a story that I wrote. But I hope you enjoyed it all the same. Some parting cautionary words, Rosebuds. Hit that like button and leave us a comment, or you might, within 5 days, experience the curse of the black fuzzy pooch visiting your doorstep at the stroke of midnight. It's absolutely true. So make sure to protect yourself and show us some love here on our channel so we can keep making creepy content for you. Alright, Rosebuds, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Take care and stay creepy.